You're listening to the wide world of Wu. Thanks for tuning in. We are talking today about Enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers. My name's Tyler. I'm here with Andy. How you doing, Andy?
Hey, I'm not doing too bad. It's a snowy day here in Minnesota, Minneapolis, Minnesota, but a nice day to sit here and talk about the Wu-Tang Clan.
Right on, dude. So let's set the scene here, starting with facts first. Enter the Wu-Tang came out on November 9th, 1993 on Loud Records, founded just 2 years earlier by Steve Rifkind. It's got 13 tracks, 12 songs, 11 completely original songs, with Seventh Chamber showing up twice in different permutations. It was produced entirely by the RZA, peaked at number 41 on the Billboard 200, sold 300,000 copies in its first week, hit platinum in 1995, and then didn't hit triple platinum until 2018, interestingly enough. 5 videos were made: Protect Your Neck, Wu-Tang Clan, Ain't Nothing to F With, Method Man, The Mystery of Chess Boxing, and Can It All Be So Simple. Have you seen any of these videos?
Oh yeah, actually, funny enough, I was literally just watching them, but yes, I have seen them.
What do you think? Do you have a favorite? What are your reflections on the videos?
Can It All Be So Simple is a good video. It kind of we've talked about this in the last episode. I have these like it's like freeze frame memories, like these really bad like memories that I can't remember exactly when they happened, but I
Uh-huh.
do remember some of this stuff from when I was a kid. Um, that video I do kind of remember being around when I was a kid. I don't think we had like cable or anything at that point in time, but I just remember seeing these videos. Like doing this research has actually kind of sent me back on a back down memory lane type thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of bizarre in a lot of ways, but it's really cool.
Hmm.
Uh,
I didn't even think about talking about the artwork, which is so iconic.
mhm.
So we've got 6 guys here with the masks on. That was to kind of keep the mystery about a couple of the folks weren't able to make it for various reasons. I think incarceration was insinuated, but that way you don't really know who's there, who's not, and with
Mhm.
the kind of out of focus photography, it makes it, you can't really tell like how many dudes at first glance there actually are. So pretty cool. I don't know. What do you think? Do you feel like it fits with the album?
Definitely. There was a lot of a lot of things that I was thinking about with this album. Um, and there's a lot of like what we would call now lo-fi production.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, just like all of that, I think the artwork fits really well. I think it leaves a lot of mystery. The album is very mysterious in its own way.
Right.
And it's like very theatrical and it all works together so well. Yeah, no, I love that album cover. One of my best friend actually has it on his wall,
Uh,
the vinyl of it, and every time I go to his apartment, I stare at it. So
yeah. Yeah. It's just building more of like the mythology and like the kind of I don't know, characters, I guess, even though you can't see who they are. It's like, they're not just normal everyday people. And then when you open the liner notes or you watch the video to like Protect Your Neck, you get the introduction to these aliases or characters. And so, it's kind of establishing these new identities for like the RZA, as he's ending his kind of basically ending his career as Prince Rakim,
yep.
and the Jizza, who was the genius. So these guys had their little clique before the Wu-Tang Clan. RZA as Prince Rakim, Genius as Jizza as Genius, ODB as a scientist. They were in their little All In Together Now crew in the late 80s. Jizza and RZA had solo albums in 91 on let's see, Tommy Boy and Cold Chillin', and
Yep.
then they both got kind of let go from their labels around the same time. So 1991, their albums release, and then they're kind of quickly let go. And so 1992, RZA gets right back at it and records a demo. Have you heard the Wu Tang Demo by chance?
Actually, no.
Yeah,
I should check that out.
yeah, you should. It's I mean, you were talking about how like lo-fi this record is. Oh man, listen to the demo. It's like 3 steps lower fi. Uh, so they do a couple tracks that ended up, I mean, variations on the tracks that ended up here. They do Tears. They do Bring to Ruckus with different lyrics, different verses. So the artwork is like even grittier. It's like the Wu W with a hand reaching out from the top of the W and holding a decapitated head.
Okay. I think I've seen that before, but I don't know.
Right.
I didn't realize it was the cover for the demo.
Yeah. So
Also, fact that was drawn by Mathematics, DJ Mathematics.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And he was pretty young at the time. I want to say 16, 17, 18, I believe. But yeah, so he was kind of with that clique. I've seen a video clip of like a public access show.
Yeah, I think I know.
Yeah, with RZA, Jizza, ODB, and Mathematics. Jizza is basically the only one who talks in it, but so yeah, so they go back, and then I guess that made it easier for them to start with this new idea where RZA had kind of started collaborating with Ghostface Killah, or Ghostface Killer, as he's known in the liner notes and in the Protect Your Neck, which is so funny because you see like the early versions of these names. Like in the Protect Your Neck video, Inspecta is spelled with a K. In the liner notes, he's just known as Rebel INS. You know, Raekwon is Shala Raekwon. Yeah, those are about the only ones. There's just variations on spelling and stuff. And
For sure.
I was thinking about like how crucial that is to establishing kind of the mythology and like the larger than life aspect of these rappers. Like, you know, what if they had not come up with these and just used their given names like Dennis, Robert, Gary, Corey, yeah. Jason.
Method Man's name is Clifford.
Right? Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, the talent would have been there, of course, but you know, it just adds another layer having these aliases. Yes. So we're introduced to them, you know, in the Protect Your Neck video, and that song came out. That's what helped them build the hype to get their deal with Loud, was Protect Your Neck, where you got to see all these rappers, you know, having their chance in this interesting song without a real hook. So that's what led to it. You know, we were talking about kind of little bits of facts and factoids about this. One that I read that I thought was really interesting was that RZA had I don't know if I can believe this, that it wasn't sourced well, but RZA considered bringing Scotty Waddy, Jackpot Scotty Waddy, who is a rapper who is around that group, you know, quite a bit when they were younger. He's been Definitely. You know, Scotty Waddy.
I know the name. I've heard RZA say it so many times.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, maybe it's true then, because he is on You God's Dopium. He's on 2 tracks on Dopium. I think he's on a track on the keynote speaker of You Gods, and then he's on the rapper Logic's Wu Tang Forever, which includes all
Oh,
it includes all of the Wu Tang members plus Scotty Waddy. So that leads me to believe there is something there because I read Raekwon saying something like they when they saw that Scotty Waddy was on, that's kind of what encouraged them to jump on this track with Logic. Um, so what I heard was that he was considered to be like a full-time Wu member around the time of 36 Chambers. But
interesting.
it is interesting because then you've got the fact that like Master Killa, for instance, he gets on
Mhm.
36 Chambers, but he's not even listed in the liner notes. So, and he only
Yeah, he
had the
was
one
just
verse.
a friend.
What was that?
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to. He's just his friend, I guess. Or that's what I listened to an interview with him,
Yeah,
and he
okay.
said he was hanging out, and he was just always around. And
Right.
that's when he wrote that verse, he was just like, "Let me try it," And he
Yeah.
wrote one of the dopest verses that anybody could have written for their
Right.
first verse ever.
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah,
So he was just kind of like hanging around. I know Killa Priest was also kind of in the running. We talked last week about
yep,
how Master Killa and Killa Priest had to like write that last verse for chess boxing and see who could get on it. So it just like to me, it doesn't quite add up that they were also both vying for this, and then Scotty Waddy is like not even mentioned really. Some wherever I read that RZA was considering him, they also said that he got like a shout out in 36 Chambers, but I cannot find it anywhere. Like I don't see it in the liner notes. I don't hear it like as RZA's like, spouting off various affiliates.
yeah.
You haven't come across that, have you?
I don't think I remember hearing it on 36 Chambers, and I literally just listened to it today. But I know I've heard RZA say that name, and that's the only reason I actually really know it. I guess I knew of that Logic song, but I haven't really listened to it.
Yeah.
Maybe I should,
I
but
mean, it's worth a listen. It is I would say, as maybe you could imagine, Logic is like the weak link, but
yeah,
to hear, all of them together, it's I don't know, it's pretty gratifying, I would say.
for sure.
Um okay, so that's kind of a mystery, but whatever. Any other tidbits that you have for the history
I,
or anything related?
I just want to go ahead and say that Scotty Waddy has a great name, and hearing RZA say that name is hilarious. Uh, And then the only fact I can think of that you actually, I had most of the facts that you had mentioned written down. So we're on the same page. But the album title comes from Enter the Dragon. The film 1970 is from 1973, and then there's another movie from 1978, which I guess is like a sequel called the 36th Chamber of Shaolin.
Hmm. Yep.
So those are the only two facts that I could think of that you hadn't mentioned. So besides the Scotty Waddy one.
Okay. Yep. Yep. Cool. Well, tell me about your first exposure to this. Was it that video for Can It All Be So Simple?
uh, I kind of so 36 Chambers era. Um, I actually did a little math on this one. I was probably about 5 or 6 years old when that album came out. My older brother was about 12,
Okay.
and he kind of was my gateway into that whole thing, anyways. But around that time, I don't think we had like cable TV or anything. But I'm pretty sure my brother probably had heard, from going to school and all that kind of stuff, had heard of Wu Tang Clan and all that. And then I told you about that shirt, but that was Wu Tang Forever era for sure, because I do actually remember um, that was my first exposure to really hearing the Wu Tang Clan, was hearing because I listened to that album today and I heard a sketch and I was like, oh man, like I remember hearing this when I was a little kid with my older brother.
Yeah.
And Anyways, so 36 Chambers was kind of like I'd probably heard it. I'd probably seen the videos. I know I'd seen the videos when I was a kid, but I didn't really know what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd kind of discovered it later on in probably about high school, early high school, late middle school era.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
just through friends.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, no, definitely like I fell heavy into
Okay.
that album. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So, you know, pretty early. Actually, I don't know what the average age of a music, like a full-time music consuming person is, but I would say like a little earlier on, if you're like 13, 14, maybe that's normal, but you were saying like when you first heard Wu-Tang Forever, that was when you were like 8 or so, 9, somewhere around there.
yeah, I was probably about 8 or 9 years old.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Okay.
I also had a brother who was 7 years older than me, so that's how I heard it.
Right.
I definitely would not have been able to buy that record.
Right. Yeah, because you got that big parental advisory sticker on the front to make sure
Oh
that
yeah.
the clerk won't sell it to you. So
Yep.
I was well clear of any type of restriction being put on based on my age. I think I was. We talked about this last episode. I think I was 22 or so. It was at Josh Thomas's 21st birthday at the Triple Rock when I heard uh, that beat to Cream, and somehow I knew it was Wu Tang. Probably someone mentioned it, and it was just like instantly stuck in my head. Um, and interestingly, I had heard kind of an interpolation or an homage on the Transplants. I think it was the Transplants' first record where they had Dream, which was Drugs Rule Everything Around Me, which
Yep.
yeah, at the time I was like, oh, it's kind of silly. I don't really get it. Now, I get it a little bit more. I still think I prefer the Wu-Tang version quite a bit more. Um,
Definitely.
so I heard that song. I didn't track down a copy of the CD until about 2 years later, is when I finally got it, and I just played the heck out of this CD. So like I really didn't feel like I had to review it that much before we taped this episode. I did anyway, but
Yeah,
it was like, it's like you put it on and there's barely any words that you don't know, even though it might have been several years since you listened to it. I
for
think
sure.
that's the sign of a pretty good album. But let's get into our evaluation of it. Beats, bars, and top tracks. Let's start off with the beats. Um, Cream, I already mentioned that sample is like one of my favorite samples ever. They RZA really just took. I mean, the sample that he used is, I'm looking at the liner notes right now, the Charmels, actually written by Isaac Hayes and David Porter, from the song As Long as I've Got You. And he just took that loop is just like in the first 5 seconds of that song, and then it stops and it never goes back to it, which is really interesting because it's so catchy, but for whatever reason they didn't find it necessary to use it that heavily in the original song. But like that intro part where they're just kind of talking, that's also from the same song, just from a little bit later on. So that's the big one for me. I love that sample. I love the beat. Another one that is always in my head is Tears, which again, RZA didn't do a ton to Tears when he sampled it, which I was very surprised when I went and listened to the original, because I had thought that this was an early, maybe even the first example of
Huh.
Chipmunk Soul.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely.
So modulating the pitch. I could have sworn that Tears, it seems like he tweaked, like pitched up the vocals a little bit, but if you listen to the original, that's actually what it sounds like. As far as I can tell, he didn't do much to the pitch. So I was wrong about that. But I think from what I've read, ODB's Snakes might be one of the first examples of Chipmunk Soul, which was also a RZA production. So
For sure.
no matter how you slice it, still incredibly prolific use of sampling invented by the RZA. So those two are some of my favorites. Bring to Ruckus, I also love, just getting the record going. You've got like those horn bursts, and then Ghostface comes in, Ghostface catch the blast of a hype verse. It's one of those where it just hits just perfectly.
Definitely. And the drums on that song are awesome. And then there's actually this part where you hear kind of a crack in the beat.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that RZA was actually hitting a bucket and he just put a bunch of like effects on it, like some reverb or something.
Oh man, you gotta love that. Just
Yeah.
so great. Yeah. I mean,
awesome.
it was on recorded on a budget. So to have that kind of ingenuity, genius.
Definitely.
So those are some of my favorites. There's just like little things that I don't love. Can It All Be So Simple? I like the song. I think of it as kind of like a relative of Cream. I don't love the like fat bass with the fret buzz. It sounds terrible in my car. It's just always like, as a bass player, maybe I should like it since it's so prominent, but it doesn't do a lot for me, and it just like kind of gets in the way. Maybe it's because I've typically been listening to this record in my car, and it just like
for sure. It's a very weird bass sample. I kept thinking about that today. I was like, it's not like the best sample I've ever heard, especially for a bass line in a rap song.
Right.
But it's weird. It's so weird the way he clipped that, because I don't know. He must have I definitely feel like some of this album is obviously genius. Like the production is very genius and very like innovative and different.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely has a lot of that boom bap feel that era had anyways, but like he was definitely on something else, but some of it you can tell he was definitely learning too.
Right. Yeah, and that's super evident if you listen to the demo. How
I have to listen to that now.
But it's cool like how far he comes in a relatively short amount of time. The demo came out in 92. This was recorded in I think like 92, 93, or maybe 93, 94. So it's just like, continuously pushing
For sure.
And not letting those I don't know, failure is not the right word, but rejections from Tommy Boy or other things that have stood in their way, but just keeping at it and learning on the fly. The other thing that I don't love about this record is that Seventh Chamber is on there twice with the part 2 track 12. For me, it's just, I don't know, like it's not different enough to warrant, like I don't need to listen to it twice in the same spin. So those are like relatively small critiques, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who do appreciate having the remix and like being able to appreciate the music from different aspects on Seventh Chamber, because it's a pretty cool song and it's got a lot of different rappers on it. I think it might have like basically everyone aside from Master Killa and You God. I could be wrong about that. Do you know?
I think you're right. I do like that remix a lot. It kind of reminds me of like the Pete Rock remixes in a lot of ways. But I do agree that it's weird that it's on the album. It should have just been put out as like a like a like a lot of people will do a remix on a single, so put it as like the side B or something, and that it would have been better off that way because it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but
Right.
it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's weird that it's on the end of the album. That's all. I can agree with you on that
Right.
much.
Right. I guess if you wanted to hear it without that skit, that would be a reason for having it again, because the track 4, the first incarnation of it, has the Killa Tape skit.
Hmm.
And allegedly that has You Got on it. So in that way, this track would have everyone except Master Killa. So that's kind of significant. And apparently the first version, track 4, also samples that same Charmel song as Cream, As Long As I've Got You. I don't know if I could have picked that out. Did you notice that?
I actually didn't notice that, but that is pretty awesome.
Yeah. So all in all, there's so many things you can say about this album with regard to the beats, just being innovative on so many levels, using samples fairly sparingly compared with a lot of artists.
Yeah.
I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 because it's great. But like you said, there's still a little bit of room for improvement. You can see some experimentation and some development. So 9 out of 10 for beats on my end. What do you got for beats?
Uh, I guess I would agree with you on the 9 out of 10 aspect, or the rating. Sorry, I'm reading my notes and talking at the same time. Um, yeah, no, it's a classic album. Obviously, everyone knows that. The beats on that album, I mean, would set the template for what would become known as the Wu-Tang Clan and like what would be known as RZA's signature style. And yeah, no, there's definitely like listening through it today. I was listening to it. I guess I've listened to that album 1,000 times, but more as a fan and
Mhm.
less as somebody picking it apart.
Mhm.
So it's today I was kind of listening to it more that way, and I have to say that there's it's funny to listen, like especially like this having listened to so much like hip hop and then like just underground stuff, and it's like, man, these guys, like this album was super innovative and different for its time, and like it is great, but at the same time like I can hear things that remind me of like listening to a demo that I've got from a guy standing outside of First Avenue,
Yeah.
And I feel bad saying that because I love that album so much, but it's kind of true when I listen to it like that.
Yeah. What are your favorite beats on it?
Bring the Ruckus is definitely one of my favorite beats.
Mhm.
Just with the drums, definitely it was Clan in the front.
Okay.
Um, it's a very simple song. There's not a lot to it at all. Obviously, Jizz is amazing,
Yeah.
you know, but that the chants like
Oh
in the
yeah.
background with the ad libs left in at the end of that song are it always gets me. It puts me in a totally different space. I feel like I'm not even where I am when that comes on because it just like hits me so hard. Um, yeah, no, it's definitely like I feel like there's moments on that album where it takes you away,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's definitely a great song. Seventh Chamber is a great song, great beat. Um, I'm trying to Mystery of Chess Boxing.
Hmm. I actually had that one on my list too, but I forgot to bring it up. I love that beat and the little like stringed instrument, whatever it is, that's adding
Yeah,
the flair to it.
yeah, that is such a cool beat.
Yeah.
That's actually got to be one of my favorite beats, like for sure. I think of all time.
Yeah.
Cream is a great song. I mean, everyone loves that song, and it's a great beat. Uh, let's see here. Trying to think. I think that those are probably my top songs on that album.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't disagree. I had Cream, chess boxing. Um Yeah. So nines were in agreement, which is good. It wouldn't be bad if we weren't in agreement, but
Yeah.
let's go to bars, and talk about some of the best verses on this just incredibly iconic record. So many memorable verses. I was a little daunted in trying to even like pick out which ones were more memorable than others. And I think you could basically put them all on a sheet of paper and throw a dart in the dark and you would land on an iconic verse. So
For
um
sure. Yeah.
Cream, I mean, you've got two just incredibly powerful verses. um
Yes.
whose verse would you take on Cream as the top?
Trying to- I would have to say, I mean, I think the intro verse is probably one of the best verses, like, and this is a big, like a far statement. Some people would probably totally disagree with me, but as far as iconic like verses in the history of hip hop music, especially in that era, in the golden era,
Yeah.
um, go, I would say Raekwon had written one of the best verses ever written in hip hop history, in my opinion, on that song.
I mean,
It's
yeah.
yeah. To me, it goes down in history. I know it. I think of like I say it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
like, like
Dude.
yeah,
I grew up on the crime side, the New York Times side. I mean, that's yeah.
yeah,
I gotta I this is a toss up for me, and that's why I threw it out there because I can't decide. Like Raekwon's is so it sets the perfect like timbre for this song, and then Inspected Dex is like, in my
yeah.
opinion, just as good. Like it's kind of a similar like kind of cautionary tale or like coming of age tale. So I couldn't, if someone paid me, I couldn't pick which verse is better on Cream.
I guess um I have a like I'm trying not to rate Inspector Deck too much because in my eyes he can really do no wrong.
Right.
So I'm
Yeah.
just trying not to throw him in the mix because I feel like I could always do that with that guy. He's always on point in my opinion. I don't think he's never not, even on his worst day.
Yeah.
But and I mean you could say the same about Raekwon for the most part, but I
Hmm.
think that verse is just like it really like for me personally, like listening to that album now and then thinking about like, well, had I been like, say, my brother's age or so around that age, when that album came out and heard it for the first time, that's like an introduction to Raekwon right there. Like that,
Right.
you know exactly who that dude is. You know, like everything he did after that, you're like, yeah, you don't need to tell me anything else. Like,
Dude, yeah, that's a good point. They're like kind of autobiographical, and especially with Raekwon, yeah, I agree. Um, who who would you say are the all stars of this album lyrically?
Uh, well, actually, it's funny. Especially when I was younger and like I kind of became friends with a group of people that were like hip hop heads and like really into Wu Tang, especially. They would always talk about how like You God is kind of like the weaker link of the Wu Tang clan, but
Uh-huh.
I've honestly like I as time goes on, I really enjoy a lot of the stuff that he does. And you were kind of talking about that the last time. I didn't really say anything, but in my mind, I was like, as time's gone on, I really like him a lot. I like his some of his stuff on the album is very sparse.
Right.
It's not like a lot. He's not saying a lot, but what he does do rhythmically is it's very simple and it's very unique and his voice is very unique and
Yeah.
like this is a different album, but he has one of my favorite verses besides Inspector Deck on Triumph.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Right.
yeah.
That's iconic.
But yeah, but he has some moments on this album I'd say that are really like cool. But I would say definitely the all stars of this album, in my opinion. You get to see the beginning of what would become a beautiful duo between Raekwon and Ghostface,
Totally.
and I feel like they work really well as a team, and they kind of almost within that group became a group,
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
like weird but awesome.
Yeah.
I would say Inspector Deck is just like he doesn't get noticed as much, especially when he does nowadays, but back then he didn't. I mean, he
Mhm.
did definitely by like lyricists and hip hop heads, but not by the industry so much, not by the mass majority. But I'd say he's obviously got some of the most iconic verses on that album,
Yep.
you know.
Yep.
And but Jizza obviously has some really great ones.
Mhm.
ODB is awesome all
Yep.
over that album and
Yep.
has a lot of energy. But I would say well, Method Man,
Yeah.
there's definitely a core group of people that came out of that album, and I would say they are the all stars, and they kind of got the first uh superstar treatment, especially they got the solo albums that came out first and stuff like that,
Yep.
which is
Yep.
unfortunate, but you know
Right.
telling of who were the superstars of that album.
Right. Yep. Exactly. I had Inspector Deck, ODB, Raekwon, and Method Man as my kind of all stars for this. And
For sure.
yeah, it's like uh Method Man, the song is like, it's never, for some reason, it's never been my favorite, but it deserves all the accolades. Like, it's so catchy. Like, I
Uh-huh.
mean, as like almost like a pop song. And
For sure.
I was reading that he wrote the like kind of subtle melody to it while listening to Michael Jackson covering the Beatles come together.
Yeah, I heard that too. Actually, after I watched that interview, I had never heard that version, so I went to listen to
Right.
it.
Could you tell at all? I haven't listened to it.
Yeah, I could see exactly what he was saying. I mean, he's doing the same rhythmic pattern that the Beatles were doing, but it like is definitely more it's Michael Jackson. It's more dramatic, and like he puts that oomph into it that Michael Jackson had, and I could see
Yeah.
exactly where Method Man got that cadence from. And it's actually it's really funny because I never would have picked that out.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, just that, I mean, it's so catchy. Like the lyrics are so like referential to so many different aspects of pop culture. It's a smart song in so many ways.
For
And
sure.
it captures
Yeah,
his it kind of captures his like his style and his like sense of humor. So I love that one. um so let's see. Am I ready to give a rating? I don't know. Chess boxing, I haven't even mentioned that. That's probably like, being able to hear You God have, a short verse, being able to hear Master Killa, that's a big one for me.
mhm.
Um, I think overall, this album probably has, you were talking about how like, you could definitely tell in some of the production aspects that they were still developing. And I think you could say the same for lyrically, like especially with their flow. Like it still kind of had some of those elements of like old school a little bit, like
Yeah, definitely.
with, I don't know, Tears is maybe an example of kind of that like storytelling, like a little bit slower cadence. um
Hmm.
so it's not bad. It is what it is. It's just I like the smoother, little bit faster tempo delivery of songs like, I don't know, chess boxing and protect your neck,
For
um,
sure.
cream, I
Oh,
guess. Like,
chess boxing, the video for that was one of the videos I watched, and
oh,
that's
so
a great
good,
video.
so
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Yeah. Just, yeah, I mean, we were talking about like the mystery of it, like well, it's in the name, but
Yeah.
uh it's just great imagery and just kind of a funny concept of chess boxing. Apparently it's a real thing, like playing chess and boxing, but it's just, yeah, it's great. So all right, I think I'm gonna give it, for bars, I'm gonna give it a 9 also. It's just, it's so iconic, you can't, I don't think you can have it any low. I couldn't have it any lower than that. But at the same time, they're not the best verses that we would ever see from a lot of them. Now, here's a question. Do you think any of the members were already at their peak? And I'm not saying like they went downhill afterward, but had any of them already gotten as good as they would be for the rest of their career, and not like you could see they were just kind of starting out, maybe as with Master Killa, for instance?
For sure. Dang, sorry. I don't know if I'm supposed to or not. Um, I would say the only member I can honestly say that about is Raekwon.
Okay.
I would say he was definitely like a full-fledged, like, it's weird to say this. Well, him and Jizza, I would say, okay, because Jizza, I mean, the thing is like you were kind of saying, and these are all things I was kind of thinking about myself, is they all have that, like, they're still kind of in that era
Yeah.
of like, that early 90s, late 80s. There's a certain type of flow that was around back then, and you hear it a lot on that album, and there's nothing wrong with that because it was just the time,
Right.
you know. And I think I even watched a interview with Raekwon where he was talking about how him and Ghostface, when they first heard Nas, they were like mind blown. They
Hmm.
loved it because they were
Hmm.
like, that dude's the real MC. Because before that, it was Cool G Rap who
Uh-huh.
had kind of changed the flow style from the very punchy like 80s style to a more, and him and Rakim kind of changed the style at that point in time.
Yep.
So I would say that Raekwon was kind of the most full-fledged of like what he would be. He definitely got better over time, I would
Hmm.
say, but
Hmm.
yeah,
Okay.
he sounds the least like that.
Uh-huh.
Because even Jezza kind of still has that da 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 da, that kind of
Right.
stuff. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say for me, um, possibly I agree with you about Raekwon. Like, right off the bat, he was he was hitting home runs. Inspector Deck, maybe. Method Man also maybe. Like,
Yeah,
he
Method
just
Man
kind of,
definitely.
yeah, like just really popping off. And what I really love about Method Man is that he has operated at a really high level for a really long time. Like, he just, as far as I can tell, he doesn't phone it in. And I think I hadn't been appreciating that about him as much until recently. And I've been listening to like some of the newer verses he's been doing, and I'm just like, yeah, he's just been there from day one,
Hmm.
in my opinion. So, all right. So, like I said, 9 for me. What you got on bars?
Yeah, I would say uh I would give it a 9. I would give it a solid 9. That song, we were talking about Mystery Chess Box and still, right? Sorry.
Well, I mean, among other things, but I'm just
uh
talking like bars in general for the album. A 9.
oh, for the album,
Yeah.
I would say a 9.
Okay.
I would definitely say a solid 9. I would say that I agree with you on Method Man is a workaholic, I think, and
Yeah.
he just as much as RZA was on the production side, and which is why he was kind of the first star, you
Yeah.
know.
Right. Right.
But yeah, no, I agree 100% with you on what you're saying. I think he's just, he knows, he has a vision, he knows what he wants. He's definitely not as intricate in certain ways as some people are about certain things in that group, but
Right.
he is in like his pop culture references and a lot of the things that he does. He has a certain flair that other people in that group don't have.
Yeah.
And um, yeah, they all have something on that album I would give it a solid 9. I would say the only thing that really holds back on that album is that just they were in that era.
Right, right. Right, it was like kind of a transitional state, yeah. And I was gonna read a quote that I read, but I don't know when a good time to do that is actually, because it kind of captures that. um
Go ahead.
but
I want to hear it now.
I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna save it till after we do our overall score.
Okay. All right.
All right.
That's
All right. Next is top tracks. So my top track is coming down to between Cream and Chess Boxing. Cream for the reasons that, well, first of all, it's what pulled me in. Um,
for sure.
it really, for me, it kind of like reaches out and touches my soul in a way that the most of the other songs don't, and like, kind of a, I don't know, an inspirational way. um but it's just so good. It's hard to not pick Cream. But I'm actually gonna go with The Mystery of Checksboxen as my top track, and the reason for that is I am kind of a sucker for variety and eclecticism, and um, that extends to getting to hear some of the quote unquote lesser known members or the lesser appreciated members. So we start off with You God with that iconic Raw, I'ma give it to
Yeah.
you, which is just, the perfect first couple words. And then you end with Mastakilla on his only appearance on the album, which, I've definitely read people who say that that's his best verse. I don't necessarily agree with that, but it was a heck of a way to introduce yourself. And that whole line about like the flow changes like a chameleon, like that's exactly what it does. I mean, it's like you think it's going one way and then it slides off the other direction, but yet he still
Hmm.
finds, he still finds the rhymes, he still makes it work. So it's a tough call between those two songs, but I'm going with The Mystery of Chessboxing as my top track.
For sure.
Andy.
Okay. I would have to say, man, that's no, everything you said is completely on point, honestly. And that verse is always crazy because of those the exact Master Killer verse is always crazy because of those exact reasons. It's so
Yeah,
smart.
yeah.
It It's a lot to think about. It's a lot to digest, and it's crazy that that guy just wrote that like for the first time wrote that verse.
Oh, right. Yeah, we didn't even, or did we even mention that? Maybe we did. We mentioned it the first episode. Yeah, that
Yeah,
that was the first, literally the first verse he ever wrote. Incredible.
it is honestly.
So what are your
So
top contenders?
my top contenders, I would have to say, um, Cream is a great song. It is probably one of the first songs that kind of pulled me into at one point in time. And it's just a classic song, great hook, great verses. Um, I think my two that I battle with the most are probably Seventh Chamber and Mystery of Chess Boxing.
Okay.
Uh, Seventh Chamber is like pretty much hands down one of my favorite songs. I think, especially like just favorite hip hop songs, but also just favorite songs of all time. I think one of my favorite beats of all time.
Nice.
Um, yeah, and Mystery of Chess Box. Oh man, I can't talk.
I was
Mystery
having the same problem.
is is uh is a great song for everything that you said. Basically, that first couple lines really pull you in, and then from there, it's just there it just hits you super hard. It never dulls down. It never gets bad. There's not
Mhm.
a yeah. No, that whole song is great.
Yeah.
One that I don't know. It is. I do really like the song a lot, and is Shame.
Okay.
and it
Yeah. Yeah.
I first like I'd heard the song before like as the Wu-Tang Clan song, but I think what made me like that song was when I was a kid I heard the System of a Down cover of it.
Oh, I didn't know they did.
Yeah, they did, and RZA, I think RZA and Jizz are on it actually.
No way. All right.
Yeah,
Well, you know what we need to do? We need to do an episode on Wu guest appearances or collaborations with like rock artists because I think there are some interesting ones.
definitely.
Just I had thought about that before, but this is a perfect opportunity to bring it up. So just keep it in the back of your head.
For sure. But I think those two songs are I have a really hard time rating Seventh Chamber and Mystery Chess Boxing. I kind of bounce between the two a lot because
Uh-huh.
they're two really great songs. Seventh Chamber, I mean, hands down is just one of my favorite songs, but that other one is just so iconic. There's so many great verses. That beginning is so good, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
It just hits you, and like I love that his voice and his cadence on that are just so good.
Yeah. All right. What are you gonna pick for you want you want to flip a coin or you pulled in one direction if you had to pick
Ah,
one?
I would have to say, shoot, that's so hard. Um, I'm gonna go with Mystery of Chess Boxing too because of the beginning verse is awesome. It pulls you right in, and then that Master Killer verse is just phenomenal, and it's like the whole story behind it and everything is just amazing.
Yeah.
So
All right.
I'm gonna have to go with that as well.
All right. Two Mystery of Chess Boxings as our top tracks. That works. Let's go to overall score. So here are some things to consider: cohesiveness. Guests would be one, but there really are no guests unless you consider Master Killa a guest because he's not on the not on the liner notes as a member. Production, story, skits. How do you feel about skits in general? Are you a fan of skits or hit or miss, or what's your take?
So um honestly, like as an avid hip hop listener, I love skits and some of them are really terrible. This album and actually Wu-Tang Forever are they have amazing skits, but this album I don't think there's a bad skit on this whole album. I think we both know exactly what skit I'm like. The Method Man one, it's just yeah, it's great,
Yeah.
it's iconic. I think about it all the time. um yeah. What more can I say?
All right, so here's my take. My take is a little different. Have I would say I'm less um generally enthused by skits.
For
Um
sure.
uh so for me they're kind of hit or miss. I actually do enjoy them. Not that there are a lot, but Liquid Swords. I like the skits on here. I don't know. Like, I guess the more you're familiar with kind of what's going on, the more enjoyable they are. Like the Killa tape. Um, it definitely took me a while before I understood what was going on with that and what the punchline was. So for me, I'm trying to think if I don't feel like they really detract that much. I think I could have done without some of the skits.
For sure.
Like uh they can either tie an album together really well or they can kind of get in the way. I feel pretty ambivalent about these skits in particular. um but in terms of like overall cohesiveness, I think it's like it was all painted with the same brush. So it just really gels together well. The production is consistent, the mixing is consistent. Um, yeah, I think for an overall score based on the beats and the bars that we already listed, I think I'm kind of thinking a 9 out of 10, which some people might think is a little low for such an iconic album, especially from self-proclaimed Wu-Tang fan. But 9 out of 10 is really good. I think many of the like critical reviews and the time and maybe even since have kind of been around there, like 4 out of 5, and
For sure.
like on a letter grade scale, an A. Just kind of looking at them. Yeah, I mean, uh, let's see, Robert Christgau, who's like one of the most respected music writers, gave it an A-, which is good. Spin gave it an 8 out of 10. Um, yeah, I feel like I'm pretty comfortable with a 9 as the overall score for 36 Chambers. What about you?
Uh, I would have to agree. Um, I think the 9 is a good score. I think that there's a lot of it's an iconic album. It holds up for sure. It definitely is always a good listen.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, there's those little things. There's room for improvement. There's it's the beginning. It's not, I mean, for a first album, I would say it's pretty awesome. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, can't. I'm not gonna give someone a 10 star on their first album.
Right.
Um, no, it's great. Oh, and as far as skits go too, I'd never really liked the skit before Tears, but I was
Uh-huh.
listening to it recently, and that skit is actually like pretty crazy.
It's a pretty good setup for the
It's
song.
yeah, it's like super emotional,
Yeah.
which I mean that song is, so it makes
Right.
sense. But yeah, yeah. But
Right.
yeah, I just was thinking about that earlier.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I would have to say I agree. I think I want to give it a 10, but if I'm gonna be honest, I would give it a 9.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let me see if I can dig out that quote that I was talking about. It was from a writer for Pitchfork, which, as much as I think sometimes their writers are just writing to sound good, I actually agreed with it quite a bit. So let me see if I can find it. Okay, so this is a writer named Raleigh Pemberton, um, who said, "This is the sound of accidental fame. Something as unique and unusual as this record isn't supposed to find itself at the height of commercial viability. It's supposed to smolder underground, hidden from the view of mainstream America, who surely would not be ready for such a challenge. But America was ready in part because this one challenged convention, not listeners. Sure, its sloppy drum programming, bizarre song structures, and unpolished sound quality disturbed commercial rap purists, but the talent was so inherent and obvious, and the charisma so undeniable that it propelled the Wu-Tang Clan to the height of the rap game. And today stands not just as the hip hop classic that introduced the concept of obscure thematic characters, but also bridged the gap between traditional old school sensibilities and the technical lyricism of today." Does that not hit the nail on the head?
Yeah, man, that was really good.
Yeah. I was like, do I really want to read this whole thing? But yeah, it just kind of captured what I could not as articulately say.
For
So
sure.
where does this fit for you in terms of the Wu catalog and the best? I think for me, it's top 10. It's definitely top 10, maybe top 5. What about you?
I would say this album is definitely a top 5 for me.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite albums, I think, of all time, honestly. Even with its quirks and its flaws, just because I've, kind of like you were saying, I lived with it for a long time.
Yeah.
Like I just listened to it so much that it's kind of become a part of my life. So
Right.
I would have to say I could put it in my 5 for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, definitely there's definitely better albums and better projects, but um as far as emotional attachment goes. I guess I give it a
Yeah, that makes sense. I
five.
mean, that's part of what makes listening to music such a personal thing, is having that emotional attachment. So cannot argue with you in that at all. And yeah, I mean, I don't think there would be too many people who wouldn't put it at least in their between somewhere between their top 5 and their top 10, if not at number 1. um,
Yeah.
right on. Well, let's wrap this one up. We have a Patreon account set up. You can be a supporter of the Wide World of Wu, and you can request that we cover your favorite Wu-Tang album or one that you would like us to do. So patreon.com/Wide World of Wu. We also have an Instagram page, Wide World of Wu, all one word. Lots of good content there. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks, Andy, for all your wonderful input.
No problem. Thank you for having me again.
All right. Well, take care, and we will see you next time.